So, chapter 17, Knowledge of God. In this chapter, Hermes teaches us how to attain knowledge of God. This, he declares, is the very purpose of human life. To know God, you must share his identity, for only like can truly know like. Leave behind the material world and imagine yourself immeasurably expansive. Rise out of time to eternity. Believe that for you nothing is impossible. See that you are immortal and learned in every art and science. Be at home in the haunts of every living creature. Make yourself higher than the highest and deeper than the depths. Embrace within yourself all opposites, heat and cold, hard and fluid. Think yourself everywhere at once, on land, at sea, in heaven. Imagine yourself unborn in the womb, yet also young and old, and already dead, and in the world beyond the grave. See that everything coexists within mind, all times and all places, all things and of all shapes and sizes. Then you will know God. If it is possible to talk of the substance of God, then mind is the very divine substance. Although only God knows its precise nature, mind is not separate from God, but emanates from him, like light from the sun. In human beings, mind produces divinity. Through mind, some become godlike. Where Osiris teaches gods are immortal men, and men are mortal gods. Mind is the divine part of the human being, which is capable of rising to heaven. The material part, consisting of fire, water, earth, and air, is mortal and remains earthbound, so that he does not abandon the body that has been entrusted to him. Soul is nourished by fire and air, and the body by water and earth. Mind is the fifth part, which comes from light, and is bestowed on humankind alone. Of all the beings that have soul, only human beings are elevated by this gift of mind. May they attain knowledge of God. Such knowledge is not opinion, which is only a poor copy of knowledge, an echo in comparison with a voice, the dim reflected light of the moon compared to the brilliance of the sun. Mind and speech are great gifts that God bestowed on humans alone. Used wisely, they make a man like the immortal gods, only different in that he is incarnate in a physical form. When he leaves behind this body, mind and speech will be his guides, leading him to join the company of the gods and other souls who have attained the supreme bliss. Other creatures have voice, but not speech. Each living creature has its own unique voice, but speech is shared in common by all humans. Humankind is one, and speech is also one. It is translated from tongue to tongue. Yet whether in Egyptian, Persian, or Greek, the meaning remains the same. This is because speech is an image of mind, and mind is an image of God. By God's will, mind is like a prize that human souls may win. He filled a great bowl with mind and sent it down to earth, telling a herald to announce, "Listen, every human heart, immerse yourself in mind, and recognize the purpose of your birth. Ascend to him who sent this bowl. Those who bathe themselves in mind find true knowledge and become complete, yet they are not pleasing to the masses of men. They are thought mad and laughed at. They are hated and despised, and may even be put to death." Commentary summary writes, "Only like can truly know like. So to know God, we must become like God. To do this, Hermes advised us to imagine ourselves in all places at all times, to embrace all opposites, to know we are immortal, to see ourselves as still in the womb and yet already dead, by expanding our consciousness. In this way, we can merge with the mind of God. Mind is the immortal part of the human being. It is the divine light, which emanates from God. Of all living beings, human beings alone have this divine quality, which gives them the potential to know God. Such knowledge is not intellectual opinion. Opinion is only a dim reflection of knowledge. Knowledge is a direct experience of the truth. It is certain and immediate. An enlightened being does not have the opinions about God. He is one with God. The experience of mind is like a prize that may be won by human souls. God wants us to immerse ourselves in mind, and so become wholly divine. Yet those that do are thought mad by the mass of ignorant people. They are laughed at, despised, and even put to death. As history shows, this has often been the fate of the wisest saints and sages, such as Socrates and Christ. Any questions? Thoughts?
I do have a thought again, or a question maybe. The mind, which is mentioned, could it be a little bit of a translation thing, where this is, in some other translation, the word nous is used?
Yes, I think so.
Right.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Because then, if you do some hermetic or that kind of symbolical thinking, then supposedly air relates to mind and rationale, and then nous, or the mind, which is mentioned here very often, would be something like spirit, right? Or the fifth element, the spirit element.
Yeah.
So where it might be a little weird, actually. I'm just noticing it because I've seen the other translations. But yeah, that's worth pointing out. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's not necessarily talking about being super let's call it mental about everything, or in your head about everything. But I guess it's more about mindfulness. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's trying to describe, the mind is kind of like how it's said in like the earliest chapters. Kind of like you can envision anything in your mind. You can use your intellectual prowess to envision things, your inner vision, so you can use that to kind of almost comprehend or at least be aware of like spirit, for example.
Yeah, I saw a lot of stuff in there that reminded me of, like, again, reminders of ceremonial magic, or even stuff that you see in some of the Golden Dawn rituals, where they have you imagine yourself growing the size of the universe,
Yeah.
and things like that. It's an interesting correlation.
Well, yeah. Interesting thing to tie your use of the word nous is that in philosophy, I don't know who originated the term, but for Kant specifically, there's like an important distinction between the noumenal world and the phenomenal world. And the phenomenal world is the world of perception, like think phenomena, things that you experience, like the shadows on Plato's wall, or like the veil of Maya, you could say, perhaps.
Right.
And the noumenal world is whatever is behind that. Yeah, so it's just interesting to tie that in, and there might be an implication of idealism with, like, whatever you mean by nous being the fundamental substance of what exists behind everything else that we perceive.
Right. That's super interesting. Thanks a lot.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before that we must become God in order to know Him. Is that a hint that I have to in another state of consciousness?
Yeah. So it's kind of attuning yourself to like to the divine form, I guess, mold. Kind of trying to align yourself to the divine, to live that way, and to think that way, to be that way by your very nature, which is a long and spiritual process.
I understand, but the problem there is then that if I come back into my, let's say, old consciousness, I don't know God anymore, right? Or I just have an opinion of it, like you mentioned before, like a piece of fruit.
Well, if you were to go through the process of enlightenment, and you did ascend towards the divine and partook in it, you would be fundamentally changed then. I mean, coming back to the world, you're changed at that point. It's been like a transfiguration. You've changed. You've ascended in a sense, transcended. An illumination. Yeah. So you wouldn't really. I mean, you could maybe over time if you didn't maintain a spiritual process, but that's the whole point of maintaining a discipline. Even if you do reach moments of like divine enlightenment and illumination, it's a good practice to maintain that. It's not like a one point in a timeline. It's a continual journey to continue being one with the sacred.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, cool, good.
Yeah, to add something to that very simply, there's so much going on with correspondences, right? Well, traditionally, wherever you look, virtuous living and virtuous deeds have been associated to the divine, So in that sense, you could embody something divine even through your patterns of behavior or thinking or speech, or charity or things like that, So there, you wouldn't even need a mystical state, where obviously, well, a lot of the Corpus Hermeticum is talking about mystical states and what to do with them and how to get there to a certain degree. But I think also something that I'm not sure if it was shoehorned in there later by Christians and other thinkers, but as I understand, the popular interpretation of Hermetica is that there's also a lot of virtue involved, and enacting virtue to complete like the whole work, so to speak. So it's not just the temple ritual and mystical experiences, but also enacting virtue. Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions, or should I continue?
Oh, I guess I have
Good
one.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when you talk about like the divine, like you talk about like God, wouldn't God pretty much like kind of encompass everything? I guess if that's accurate, I guess I'm wondering like what the nature of something that is not divine would technically be.
Good question. Yes. So Hermeticism is specifically does pertain to the view that God is everything, one and the same. Something that isn't divine. The Hermetica doesn't really go into that itself, but it's kind of it's impossible for anything to not be of God in a Hermetic sense. It could be far from God, it can be distant from God in a sense where it's almost like cut off from God. But the source is always from God. Everything is from God. The eternal good, the absolute everything, no matter what.
Right. I guess like
that would be my answer.
Right. So I guess what I mean to ask is like if everything's technically kind of divine, then what is the difference between like enlightenment and obliviousness to everything, I guess. I don't know.
It's coming to humans are in a particular place in the scale of the universe according to Hermeticism. So it's realizing truly within your very being that we are one with the divine. Everything comes from it and goes back to it. It's easy to just say that and to think it, but it's another thing to experience it, to cultivate it, to express that in a true way, which can only be done through a spiritual discipline, according to Hermeticism.
Do you feel that's accurate?
I think it's somewhat accurate. Hermeticism isn't the only way to do it, I'd say that.
Okay.
But many traditions and religions do seem to pertain and teach a similar kind of roadmap. Obviously, they're not all the same, we know that, but there's a lot of correspondence between them.
Interesting
I'll say
example
that
to
there are
mention maybe
some-
is 12 Steps program, where they try to reach very mundane goals, but they in their thinking came up with a certain or like in the observation came up with a certain thing, which was that, okay, to make it work extra good, what can we learn from spirituality, and then maybe adapt that to something anybody could use, even if they're not religious or something like that. So if you want practical examples of how sort of a spiritual outlook could help, even in a spiritual life or a non-spiritual life, that would actually be something interesting to look at maybe. And also, where did these people who created that program come up with these inspirations? It's very interesting to look at. Yeah, sorry, Bubble, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. That makes sense. Like, there's definitely a spiritual component to the 12-step program. What I was going to say is that there's like a almost a mathematical necessity to some of the Hermetic ideas of God, depending on how you want to define information and consciousness and all of that. I don't know how much of a tangent to go on. So, like, even if you're talking about other systems, a lot of them will have things in common regarding the nature of the entire universe as being conscious. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. We were talking in Discord about this really long video about. I'm not sure what this guy's discipline was, but he worked at CERN and did all sorts of interesting, bare of bone dry science kind of stuff. And he's also a philosopher. And well, it's super interesting to see that with his particular and science-driven mind, he is actually coming to similar conclusions as what you would see, well, in Hermetica, in Kabbalah, in Brahmanism. It's super interesting, actually. So this was also one of the reasons why that video was probably posted and why it piqued interest. But like you say, there seems to be a necessity for certain ideas, and well, let's just leave it at that. Yeah, it's cool.
All right. Okay. So, next chapter, 18. It's called Rebirth. In this chapter, Hermes reveals the secrets of spiritual rebirth, through which we can awaken our immortal souls. Okay, so rebirth. No one can be saved until he is born again. If you want to be reborn, purify yourself of the irrational torments of matter. The first of these is ignorance. The second is grief. Third is the lack of self-control. Fourth is desire. Fifth is injustice. Sixth is greed. Seventh is deceit. Eighth is envy. Ninth is treachery. 10th is anger. 11th is rashness. 12th is malice. Under these 12 are many more, which force the man who is bound to the prison of the body to suffer from the torments they inflict. But by God's mercy they may all depart and be replaced by understanding. This is the nature of rebirth. This is the only road to reality. It is the way our ancestors trod to discover primal goodness. It is sacred and divine, but a hard highway for the soul to travel in a body. For the soul's first step is to struggle against itself, stirring up a civil war. It is a feud of unity against duality, the one seeking to unite and the other seeking to divide. He who is reborn communes with the All-Father, who is light and life. You will only experience this supreme vision when you stop talking about it, for this knowledge is a deep silence and tranquility of the senses. He who knows the beauty of primal goodness perceives nothing else. He doesn't listen to anything. He cannot move his body at all. He forgets all physical sensations and is still, while the beauty of goodness bathes his mind in light and draws his soul out of his body, making him one with eternal being. For a man cannot become a god whilst he believes he is a body. To become divine, he must be transformed by the beauty of primal goodness. The womb of rebirth is wisdom. The conception is silence. The seed is goodness. These born of this birth are not the same. They are of the gods, and of children of God, the one God. They contain all, they are in all, and they are not made up of matter, they are all mind. Rebirth is not a theory that you can strive to learn, but when God wills, he will remind you. A man may only seek to know God by controlling his passions, and letting destiny deal as she wills with his body, which is no more than clay that belongs to nature and not to him. He should not attempt to improve his life by magic or opposing his fate using force, but allow to allow necessity to follow its course. For the man of vision, all things are good, even if they appear evil to others. When man devises mischief against him, he sees it in the light of the knowledge of God, and he, and only he, transforms evil into goodness. So, the commentators say on this chapter, the working of destiny imposed on man by the turning of the zodiac subjects all human beings to the pain of birth and death. Man's problems is that in his ignorance he believes himself to be just a body, one that will grow old, suffer, and eventually die. A sense of injustice at the inevitability of his fate leads him to hurt himself and others, either through lust for more life or fear of approaching death. These crimes serve further to blind the soul of the body, and so increase man's suffering. Purifying ourselves of ignorance is therefore the first step on the ladder that leads us to rebirth. Rebirth is the knowledge of our own immortality. To escape the suffering inherent in our own human predicaments, we must be reborn in spirit. The spiritual path that we must walk is the same one trodden by our ancestors. It is a hard road to follow, whilst incarnate in a physical body, because we must struggle to master ourselves. Right understanding purifies us of all the vices that torment us and awakens our immortal soul. One is thus reborn, communes with God, but this only happens when we stop talking about it and allow it to occur naturally in the silence and tranquility of deep contemplation. An enlightened being no longer believes he is a body. The body belongs to nature, not to him, and so its fate is of no importance. He is one with everything. He sees goodness everywhere. He is bathed in divine light. He has become all mind. Rebirth is not a theory that we can learn. It is a natural occurrence that happens when God wills it. All that we may do is prepare for this enlightenment by mastering our passions and accepting whatever fate we may bring us. For a man with vision, all things are good, even if other people see them as evil. His knowledge of good gives him the ability to see goodness at work, even when he is mistreated by others. Those who are reborn are already living in the kingdom of heaven. I do want to make a point on that chapter. That's definitely the most alchemical chapter. I'll let you contemplate that one. But that's for me, this chapter is the realest of the chapters, because it probably strikes a chord with all those who are on the spiritual path, how everyone is kind of struggling with themselves. You know, the spirit is willing, but the body is not. And the chapter talks about that. A civil war within ourselves, wrestling with ourselves, or in other ways, in Christianity, wrestling with God. That's the spiritual journey. That's my take. Would anyone like to ask any questions or share their thoughts on that chapter?
So, just to preface, this is my first time reading the Hermetica. I really have no background in it, so I'm coming into this with a pretty fresh view. I myself was raised in a Christian setting. I don't identify as Christian, probably more agnostic, but the language used in this chapter is really reminiscent of a lot of like modern Christianity. Like the first line, was to be saved, you have to be born again. That's very, the born again analogy. That's very,
Yeah.
very integral to the Christian idea. But one thing that stood out to me was when they were talking. Let me just have out. When talking about the irrational torments of matter, the things that were listed there reminded me of uh, the fruits of the Spirit, New Testament, which
Mhm.
are essentially the inverse of these things.
Yeah.
So again, I don't have any prior knowledge of the Hermetica, but it's interesting to see parallels with the modern Christian tradition, and I'm sure there's a lot of overlap there. But I just found that to be interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. I'd like to say something about this born again thing, because I know about born again Christians, and I know most associations people have with them aren't very positive. But like Ingrid says, this is for me maybe also one of the realist chapters, but only because of what I learned after dropping my own preconceptions about words and so on. Because I had some experiences in my life, basically, to summarize it, running into the wall several times really hard, and every time wondering why, and then eventually, I saw the light, and it's this coming into awareness of there being something bigger than just your own petty concerns. So that was like a major transformative thing for myself. Then after reading all these philosophical works and from different traditions and so on, I noticed that these guys are all talking about spiritual or like a death and a spiritual rebirth, right? And whether you look in the tarot deck or in the Masonic first degrees or in all sorts of mythologies, there's always the story of there's a way of self-reflection that is also suffering, alleviating suffering, and so on. That is the kind of the being born again that I understand out of esotericism. It's not necessarily to do with being a born again Christian, but it's absolutely central to the experience of many people I know, and myself too, and also connecting personal experience to mysticism and mystical teachings, because there I saw my own thing that I thought I was only going through was being explained in books from many different cultures from many years ago and so on. And that was really what pulled me into this.
So yeah, you're right. It even says that. It even says that in the chapter. Your ancestors trod the same path.
Right.
There are those who have walked it before us. So yeah, exactly. Okay. The next chapter is short, and then after this next one, it is the last chapter. So it's maybe close to the final. So, chapter 19, The Secret Teachings. In this chapter, Hermes reviews his teachings and encourages us to go beyond his words to a profound realization of their truth. Now that you have learnt these secrets, you must promise to keep silence and never to reveal how the rebirth is transmitted. These teachings have been set down in private to be read only by those who God himself wills to know them. Only if you contemplate all that I have said will you know it to be true. If you do not, you will not believe me. For belief grows from contemplation, and disbelief from the lack of thought. Speech alone cannot convey the truth, but the power of mind is extraordinary, and when it has been led by speech to think things through thoroughly, it can find the peace of true beliefs. Only if grasped by thought in this way will my teachings be understood. I have, as far as it is possible, painted for you a likeness of God, which if gazed upon with the eyes of your heart, will lead you to the upward path. The vision itself will be your guide, for it has this power, peculiar to itself, that it takes possession of those who have seen it, and draws them out, just as the magnet draws iron from the black earth. This is the journey of knowledge, Speed towards this knowledge, for although it is hard, do let go of the familiar and return to the old home from which we originated. God's grace never fails, and there is no end to his bounty. He is by nature a musician, who composes the harmony of the cosmos and transmits to each individual the rhythm of their own music. If the music becomes discordant, don't blame the musician, but the lyre string he plays, that has become loose and sounds flat, marrying the perfect beauty of the melody. But I have noticed that when an artist deals with a noble theme, his lyre becomes mysteriously tuned, so that its deficiencies issue glorious music to the amazement of his listeners. It has been like this with me. I confess my weakness, but by God's power my music is made good, and he will likewise make your music perfect. There is no discord amongst the inhabitants of heaven. All have one purpose, one mind, and one feeling. They are bound by the spell of love into one harmonious whole. The earthly part of this universe would seem rude and savage without sweet melodies. This is why God sent down the choir of muses to live amongst humankind and inspire music, so that men could adore divinity with hymns of praise. But the psalms of heaven, so let us adore God with deep gratitude, because words are only praise when he accepts them. So I just to kind of finish off, I won't read the commentary because it just basically says what it's saying, but I will just say that is just Hermes kind of just saying, here it is, this is what I've given you, the teachings that was given to him by God. This is what it means. It's like music. God is a musician, an artist, a painter, and things become right and just when you sing along with that great music, when you attune yourself to the tune, sing praises of God as he sings the universe into creation. You can sing along and be a part of the great magnum opus. That's what I believe Hermes is trying to express here. I think, just to finish this all off, I'm going to read the last chapter now, and then we can take questions. So the last chapter, chapter 20, in praise of God. In this final chapter, Hermes offers up a glorious hymn to God. In a place open to the sky, facing west at the hour of sunset, or east at sunrise, I pray that the cosmos be flung open to me, and that all nature may receive the sound of my psalms. Open great earth, and trees, silence your waving boughs, for I am about to sing the praise of the one and all. Justice, praise the just through me. Goodness, praise the good through me. Truth, praise the truth through me. Selfishness, praise the all through me. It is your words that through me sing your praises, for all comes from you, and all returns to you. Accept these pure offerings of speech from a heart and soul uplifted, you of whom no words can tell, no tongue can speak, and only silence can declare. I thank you with a brimming heart, for it is only by your grace that I see your light and come to know you. I thank you, whose name no man knows, you whom we honor with the title of God, because you are our master, you whom we call Father, because you have shown in all your acts towards us the loving kindness and warm affection that a father feels. No, your love is greater than a father's love, for you have given us the gifts of mind and speech and knowledge. Mind, so that we may approach you. Speech, that we may call to you. Knowledge, so that we may experience you. Finding our salvation in your light and becoming filled with bliss. We can thank you only by learning to know your greatness. I have learnt to know you. You, the most brightly blazing light of mind. I have learnt to know you. You, the true life of humankind. I have learnt to know you. You, the prolific all womb which impregnates itself. I have learnt to know you. You, the eternal constancy, which stands unmoved and causes the whole universe to revolve. Who can speak about you? Who can speak to you? Where shall I look to praise you? Upwards or downwards? For you are space in which all things are contained. There is no place but you. All is in you. What offering can I bring you? For you are all things. You give everything and receive nothing. There is nothing that you lack. For what shall I praise you? For the things you manifest, or the things you conceal? How shall I sing to you? Am I my own? Have I everything which is mine? Am I other than you? You are all that I am. You are all that I do. You are all that I say. You are all that happens. You are all that has not occurred. You are mind in your thinking. You are Father in your creating. You are God who does everything. You are the primal goodness everywhere. You have revealed your being, and I am overcome. While I am still in the body, you have made me a god, by the gift of your eternal life, and I am filled with joy. With these words of praise I adore you, you alone who are goodness. I make no prayer but this, that by your will I be kept always still knowing and loving you, and that I never fall away from this blessed life. Rather, you have filled me with this good and beautiful vision. My mind's eye is almost blinded with splendor, more penetrating than visible light, yet so full of immortal life, that it does not hurt or harm me. By your mercy, a form has been fashioned within me, which is not made of matter, and I have entered into an immortal body. I have been born again in mind, and the bodily shape I had before has left me. I am no longer an object, tangible, colored, with spatial dimensions. I am alien to all that is seen, with bodily eyesight. To such eyes I am no longer visible. I am your instrument, mind is your plectrum, and your wisdom plucks music from me. I sing a song of my soul, for your love has reached me. You have made me a new being, and I no longer see with bodily eyes, but witness with mind. When a man is born again, he is not a body of 3 dimensions, he is all mind. Now that I see in mind, I perceive myself to be the all. I am in heaven and earth. I am in water and air. I am in beasts and plants. I am a newborn babe. I am still in the womb. I am yet to be conceived. I am the presence which is present everywhere. I see incredible depths. How can I describe this vision? With my mind I see mind. I know the one that wakes me from forgetfulness. I see my soul. I am not afraid to speak. I am afraid to speak. I have found the source of the power of all powers that has no beginning. I see a fountain bubbling with life. I am mind. I have seen. I have found that which I seek. I know peace in your purpose. By your will, I am born again. Language is inadequate. The gods sing a hymn of silence, and I am silently singing. And that is the Hermetica.
That was
So,
great.
any last passing thoughts from anyone?
It seems like it always mentions how like the mind and body are kind of at some kind of discord. Why is that?
Good question. There are earlier chapters that go over that. What it is mostly is kind of in the Hermetic cosmology, worldview. The higher you go, closer to God, the more pure, in essence, it is, the more true. But the lower and further away you are from God, the more material it is, the more physical it is. Now, in this cosmology, humanity is in the middle. We are both immortal spiritual beings, but we are also encased in physical bodies. So there's kind of this like friction there, because we are both things at once, and both things it causes this like separation. But at the same time, there is the paradox of wanting to be united and then going forward,
Right.
or
So
ascending.
I guess why it's so physicality is somehow godless.
It's not so much godless. It's more of like a distraction.
Right.
It's more of a
like, think
distraction
it
from
like,
the truth.
oh, I know I shouldn't be eating that pie, but it sure is delicious, you know. Like that's simplifying it a bit, but you know that's how there could be one kind of internal conflict, or there could be many others.
Another way to look at it is that, like, if you're trying to focus on cultivating the part of yourself in a hermetic view, um, is going to last longer than your physical body, you really shouldn't be putting an excessive amount of time into your body. Like, obviously, take care of your health and everything, but your body in the hermetic view isn't what moves on with you if you ascend or whatever it is you want to call it.
It's not permanent.
Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah, it's a keen insight.
it's like worth appreciating too, though. I'd imagine, right? If it's also part of God.
Yeah. There's still the appreciation, but don't get the idea is not to get absorbed into the body. Don't think there is only the body, but it's the same thing as well. Don't be so kind of focused on the spirit, right? Too.
Be neglectful.
Don't be neglectful. Yes.
And it also inspires.
It's a balance.
Yeah, the whole universal person philosophy, where you're supposed to evolve all your qualities, but to their highest potentials, or something like that. You know, even physical things could be elevated to divinity in that way, or things like.
A lot of Hermeticism goes back to ancient Greek views of ethics, which specifically ancient Greek virtue ethics. And there was the idea of the virtue of the mean, or all things in moderation. So, like, between any two extremes, there is an idealized amount of whatever it is in the middle. And according to, that's Aristotle primarily, but lots of other people agreed with him, some disagreed, of course. So, like, if you have, like, bravery, Aristotle would say, is a virtue, cowardice is the vice, and then there's an excess of bravery that could be like recklessness.
Yeah.
And you can apply that to pretty much any concept if you accept, you know, the same things that Aristotle accepts.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
Cheers. Good comment.
Yeah. All right. Is that everything from everyone? Okay, well, thank you for attending the last session, the last Hermetic reading session.
For now, at least.
Thank you for attending.
I mean,
for now, yes.
Curtis
Stay tuned.
will take a little break. He's pretty involved doing this every week, of course. But we will be back either with Hermetica or with some other interesting works that are worth reading and discussing together. So stay tuned for that, and you'll hear about it sooner or later.
Yes. More is coming. Do not worry.
And you can also review in the meantime on YouTube, of course. Sorry to interrupt there.
Yes, that's right. If you're also just to sell myself a little, if you're interested in seeing what other stuff I get up to, my write-ins, my art, some music as well, check it out on check my Linktree /Ingurdis if you're interested. Don't forget to check out the Discord, or BR Mystery School Discord, if you haven't already. Everyone's there. All the events and news is all posted on there, so you can keep updated. And also, a lot of work goes into this server. Taru has put blood, sweat, and tears into it, so consider donating, supporting, or if you want to get involved, you can become a volunteer. More information on that at vrmystery.school/support. So that's the end of today's session. Again, I thank you, and feel free to mingle in the lounge and chit chat and whatnot. And thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much for the sessions, Ingrid. It was awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed these.